The K-1 World Grand Prix 2001 preliminary USA Championships took place in May 5 of the same year, at the Mirage Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. It was only the third K-1 event promoted in the United States, and the 8th regional qualifying event of the year. The winner of the tournament would advance to the K-1 World Grand Prix 2001 in Las Vegas 3 months later for a chance to compete in the year's World Championship tournament in Tokyo. This was a showcase for many of the greatest North American kickboxers of the time, including some of the most famous names in the company. No North American fighter had yet made it to the finals of the yearly Tokyo show, so hopes were undoubtedly running high among the competitors. The version of the event being reviewed here aired on pay-per-view in the United States. This broadcast omits 5 of the original 15 matches, all of them super fights that played no part in the tournament. At least one of them was an amateur bout. In these fights, Brian Schwartz defeated Dion Pimento, Gary Owens defeated Billy Parvin, Angela Rivera defeated Tricia Hill, Tony Valente defeated Peter Kaljevic, and Eddie Mill defeated Jeff Horner, all by unanimous decision. The first quarterfinal match of the tournament pits Duke Roufus against Tomasz Kucharzewski. Nowadays, the younger Roufus brother is largely known for the controversy surrounding him as an allegedly dangerous trainer and promoter, but at the time, he was a major name in American kickboxing. He'd fought in K-1 a few times with mixed success, but this was his first tournament, and he was considered one of the favorites. The late karate star Kucharzewski is credited with a questionable record of 69-7 with 54 KOs. This likely combined both his karate and kickboxing records. Kucharzewski reached the finals of the last year's US tournament before losing in somewhat disappointing fashion to Andrei Dudko. He's doubtlessly looking to do better tonight, but has a mighty challenge ahead of him. The first round begins. Roufus goes to the canvas initially, but it's ruled a slip. The fighters then exchange blows and Kucharzewski goes down after a clinch. This is also called a slip, but Tomasz seems stunned and takes a while to get up. Roufus senses opportunity and comes in strong, throwing big hooks and kicks. Tomasz looks slow by comparison as he tries to push back, and suffers an actual knockdown after a right hook to the head. Roufus lands 2 hard punches to Kucharzewski's jaw, then even more during another clinch. He forces Tomasz against the ropes, throws 2 punches that don't connect, and Kucharzewski seems to lose his balance and falls to one knee. Referee Cecil Peoples calls this a knockdown, and because of the 2 knockdown limit in these early matches, Roufus wins via technical knockout. This was the last match Kucharzewski fought for K-1, though he kickboxed for at least a couple more years. Tomasz didn't reach the same heights in this sport as he did in karate, despite being a legitimately tough fighter. Part of this was due to injuries, but also because he came up against competitors who were more natural kickboxers and managed to outclass him. Again, the final knockdown was questionable, but Roufus proved dominant. He had all the strength of Kucharzewski but also superior technique. Tomasz had some good karate moves, but Roufus was the more technically minded combatant and may have won this match, one way or another. The second quarterfinal match is Michael McDonald versus Jean-Claude Leuyer. It was only recently, after years of training with Andy Hoog, that McDonald had morphed from the former Big Mac of American kickboxing into K-1's The Black Sniper. He's a small fighter for this division, but as a result is one of the company's most agile heavyweights. His opponent Leuyer is another big name in American kickboxing, being a multiple-time world champion and having fought in the previous US tournament. He lost an upset to Paul Lalonde, but not before inflicting so much damage that Lalonde lost his following match very quickly. Leuyer is very confident. In his video introduction, McDonald talked about the strategy he'd used to defeat his opponent, while Jean-Claude simply derided Michael, pointing out that he's bigger than him and how he thinks McDonald isn't very strong.
I look at his size. 1, I dwarf him. He's got quickness, but the guys I spar with are really quick also. Look at his knockout ratio, he doesn't have a lot of power behind him.
Round 1. McDonald immediately puts Leuyer on the defensive, landing punches in the clinch and a kick to the head. Leuyer tries to come back with a reverse roundhouse kick, but McDonald easily blocks it. He goes down in a slip, but lands a head kick doing so. He drives the big man into the corner, and only the end of the round breaks up the clinch. This was a really strong first round for McDonald, taking advantage of Leuyer's reputation as a slow starter. Leuyer was definitely surprised, and even though he effectively absorbed a lot of McDonald's punishment, he didn't land many strikes of his own, so this round decisively goes to McDonald. Round 2. Leuyer leads with big kicks but doesn't land them. McDonald goes for a spinning heel kick to the shin, but is countered with a punch on the chin. Leuyer throws the reverse roundhouse again, still not landing it but this time remaining upright. Jean-Claude is trying to find his pace, but McDonald doesn't let him get comfortable. He matches Leuyer for low kicks, and doesn't let himself be pushed backwards. This round was more competitive, but McDonald did a better job imposing his will. Leuyer's power forward style isn't working for him, and he's realized that he can't bully his way to a victory. McDonald uses superior quickness and timing to his advantage, but he's also stronger than Leuyer gave him credit for. Third and final round. Leuyer lands a low kick that unbalances McDonald, but no knockdown. McDonald jumps in with a left hook. They clinch up, and McDonald holds Leuyer in the corner, not letting him push out. In the second half of the round, Leuyer manages a questionable low kick knockdown. McDonald comes back aggressively, almost shoving Leuyer off his feet, but he can't match the knockdown before the round is over. The result is up to the judges, and they rule a split decision victory in favor of Michael McDonald. McDonald advances to meet Duke Roufus in the semifinals, and Jean-Claude Leuyer is eliminated. Knockdowns carry a lot of weight in K-1 judging, so it doesn't surprise me that Leuyer looks disappointed, but it's also unsurprising that McDonald won. He was more successful in imposing himself, and was all the more impressive for doing so against a larger opponent. K-1's extremely broad upper weight division is often the cause of mismatches, but a match like this demonstrates that skill and strategy can overcome size and strength. In a way, this bout demonstrates the core principle of all martial arts. The third quarterfinal match is Maurice Smith versus Pedro Fernandez. One of the biggest names of all time in American kickboxing, Smith goes back to the very first K-1 Grand Prix in 1993, for which he was handpicked based on his status as one of the world's very best. After leaving kickboxing to focus on mixed martial arts, Smith returned to K-1 in 1998, trying and failing to qualify for the Grand Prix again, so his entry in this regional tournament represents a new approach to the World Championship scene. He's attempting to work his way up, rather than jump into the deep end. Pedro Fernandez is competing for the company for only the second time. He fought in the very first US tournament in 1998, where he lost to Rick Roufus. Having been in the ring with one of the best will have been useful practice for facing a legend like Smith. The first round is very measured, with both fighters picking their strikes carefully, taking their time and feeling each other out. There are some tests of strength during the clinch, but mostly, the fighters are just getting the hang of each other. Fernandez tries a spinning back fist, but that's as flashy as it gets. Smith lands more blows, mainly low kicks. Fernandez spends his time going after his opponent, maybe wishing he'd stand and slug, but stick and move works well for Maurice. Round 2. Again, there's not a lot of action. Neither fighter is quick to strike, out of respect for the other's strength. Nevertheless, this is in accordance with Smith's strategy. He's building up points, taking advantage of small openings, and isn't bothering to look for a knockout. Fernandez seems like he's waiting for openings that just aren't coming, Maurice's legendary defense being soundly in place. Smith isn't even expending that much energy, having given up on fighting in the clinch and just waiting for the referee to break them up as soon as they lock. Neither fighter looks the worse for wear at the end of the round, but Smith is definitely up on points. Round 3 has Smith looking confident. He's feinting punches and landing combinations. Fernandez doesn't know what to do. He's waiting so long to strike that Smith usually beats him to the punch or just moves out of the way. Maurice Smith wins by unanimous decision. It comes as no surprise. Fernandez was tough, but Smith was the man with the plan, and carried it out. It's not an exciting match by most standards, but still an interesting, strategy-based fight. The last quarterfinal pits Guenther Singer against Paul Lalonde. Singer is the wild card of the tournament. He won the IMF World Cruiserweight Championship in 1990, and was establishing himself in the heavyweight division when an illness took him out of competition for several years. He's since worked primarily as a sparring partner for Freddie Roach's boxing stable, so this tournament is a return to the heights of competition for him. Lalonde was an entrant in last year's tournament, where he pulled off an upset against Jean-Claude Leuyer before losing his next match, due to injury. At 6'5", he's the tallest man fighting tonight. Lalonde starts the fight looking very powerful but not particularly accurate. Singer remains collected and demonstrates good defensive technique, effectively blocking some strikes and avoiding others. He connects with a reverse spinning roundhouse kick that knocks Lalonde against the ropes. He lands some head shots while avoiding Lalonde's own. He tries for another spin kick and then an axe kick, but neither connect. Round 2. Singer throws the spin kick twice more to no avail. Then attempts a roundhouse kick which Lalonde counters, causing Singer to fall on his shoulder and head. Moments later, Singer lands a hard right to Lalonde's jaw, pushes him into the corner, and unloads. Lalonde refuses to go down, holding onto the ropes out of pure instinct, and because the standing 8-count rule is not in effect, the referee stops the match. Guenther Singer wins by TKO. Lalonde wasn't completely outshone. He revealed some major gaps in Singer's armor, but he didn't fight with caution, and lacked the wherewithal to go down for a count, which would have prolonged the match. The first super fight of the night is a 5-round contest for the ISKA World Light Middleweight Muay Thai Championship. Duane Ludwig versus Alex Gong. Ludwig was a young pro, the WKA US Super Middleweight Champion, and was headed to the top of the US Middleweight division. He'd end up being better known for his MMA career, but at this time, his strength lay in Muay Thai. The late Alex Gong was the reigning champion. Gong is a cult name in American Muay Thai, having played a substantial role in establishing the sport in the United States. Whereas Ludwig is still regarded as an upstart at this time, Gong had been fighting at the professional level for at least 5 years, having worked his way up since winning the U.S. Amateur Championship in 1995. He's the senior boxer in this match, which is something of a showdown between generations. Unlike most of the other fights featured here, this bout takes place under only slightly modified Muay Thai rules, allowing the full arsenal of Thai boxing techniques, with the exception of vertical elbow strikes. Within the first minute of the opening round, Gong scores a knockdown with a hard left to Duane's chin. Ludwig isn't happy about getting the count, but it doesn't appear to have been a slip. It's an excellent way for Gong to start the match, and he maintains the advantage for the rest of the round, landing some good counter strikes and throwing stiff elbows in the clinch. Ludwig tries rushing in several times, but Gong is ready for him. It's a very exciting first round, and with the knockdown, it definitely goes to Gong. Round 2. Ludwig lands his first real strikes in the form of a couple of knees and a hard straight. Gong counters with a flying knee and later with an elbow, but charging seems to be working better for Ludwig this time. Gong doesn't seem comfortable fighting at close range anymore, frequently pushing Ludwig away. It makes for a fairly even round, but Ludwig is establishing a strong case against being counted out early. Round 3. Ludwig has a cut under each eye from Gong's elbows, but he's still building momentum. Gong begins to come forward more, but Ludwig seems to be getting the hang of his opponent's timing. They both land good shots, though Ludwig seems to be getting the better of many exchanges. He throws a kick which Gong catches, bounces off the ropes, and hits Gong with a right jab. Shortly thereafter, he charges out of the corner and throws a kick at Gong, who falls down but doesn't get the count. The crowd isn't pleased, but the decision is justified. Not only does the kick merely land on Gong's gloves, but Ludwig is in fact standing on Gong's foot at the time. Nevertheless, Ludwig has found his pace and managed to capitalize in the few mistakes made by his opponent. Round 4. Gong is still largely waiting for Ludwig to come to him, but it's only working some of the time. There's an unintentional low blow, for which Ludwig apologizes, followed by a brief punch exchange. Gong is somewhat successful in sidestepping Ludwig's lunging attacks. He lands a strong front kick, but takes a hard left that slows him down before the round ends. Gong has realized that he needs to be more aggressive, but his defense isn't tight enough to protect him from a lot of the punches coming his way. He's still landing strikes, but Ludwig is hitting more significant ones. In the fifth and final round, pressure is running high. Ludwig has largely taken control, but he's been knocked down and can't afford to take it easy. At first, no one lands anything more substantial than a low kick, until Duane sneaks in a knee strike that started out as a roundhouse. Alex lands some punches and several elbows. He looks tired when Ludwig and he clinch, but that exhaustion disappears as soon as they actively exchange again. In the final seconds, both fighters throw a flurry of punches, including two which catch Gong after the bell. This has easily been the most competitive and exciting match of the night. Both fighters were in great shape, and, in many regards, they were evenly matched. Both had the potential to land a knockout, but their technique is so advanced that neither had much opportunity. The decision goes to the judges, who give the split decision victory to Alex Gong. The crowd is strongly behind Ludwig, booing the decision, and it's easy to understand why. Even with the early knockdown against him, and even with the third round knockdown being ruled a slip, Ludwig seemed to land more solid and substantial strikes across a majority of rounds, and therefore would seem to have had the advantage in points. Before the fight took place, it was said that for Ludwig to defeat Gong would reflect poorly upon American Muay Thai, as it would suggest that this is a sport where rookies could unseat established champions. This belief is problematic on many levels, but the power of hindsight, in particular, doesn't support it. Alex Gong was excellent, but Duane Ludwig delivered a champion's effort. It is difficult to imagine anyone begrudging him a victory after how well he fought. Ludwig would recover from his loss. He'd win the ISKA World Championship a few years later and fight for K-1 several times more, winning the first US Max tournament and making it to the World Max Grand Prix several times. Alex Gong never fought for K-1 again, though he continued to train and compete. Tragically, he was murdered in August 2003. Were it not for his death, he might still be training future generations of fighters. The first of two semifinals has Duke Roufus fighting Michael McDonald. Both boxers had to defeat a very strong opponent to get here, but Roufus has the advantage of having fought considerably less than McDonald. Round 1 begins with the crowd audibly cheering for Roufus, who comes in as the aggressor with low kicks. McDonald endures a low blow. Roufus slips and McDonald technically kicks him while he's on the ground, but the referee excuses it. When McDonald begins fighting back more substantially, Roufus grabs his leg for a slip. Roufus then lands several knees in the clinch before the round ends. Aggression in the absence of McDonald's usual quickness is working for Roufus, who's not suffering much from McDonald's counter-strikes. McDonald comes alive in round 2, moving in and out and fighting with combinations. Roufus pushes McDonald down, but he's none the worse for wear. McDonald lands some stronger counters than before, showing his punching efficiency and no longer relying as much on kicks. McDonald throws a big overhand right which doesn't connect, but the referee counts it as a knockdown regardless. Roufus comes back with renewed vigor and hard strikes, but he can't build any momentum before the bell rings. Even without the dubious knockdown, McDonald likely won the round. Roufus can't move quite as fluidly as the black sniper, who shifts his center of gravity with ease. The means which Roufus used to control the last round don't work when McDonald is using the entire ring to fight. Round 3. Both fighters know that the fight is close, and come out strong. They trade powerful strikes. McDonald catches Roufus with 3 uppercuts over a short period. He denies Roufus the opportunity to retaliate by repeatedly backing up, and the round ends before Roufus can mount a real comeback. It was a strong round for both fighters, but the multiple uppercuts from McDonald will likely play to his favor. Indeed, it's a unanimous decision for Michael McDonald, and the crowd seems to have switched to supporting him. The questionable knockdown tarnishes the quality of the match, but both fighters put forth a great effort and kept the bout competitive until the very end. McDonald advances to the finals while Roufus leaves the tournament. He'd fight for K-1 once more, retiring from full-time competition later the same year. The second semifinal match is Maurice Smith vs. Guenther Singer. It's not clear who's the fresher fighter at this stage. Singer certainly finished his match earlier, but Smith demonstrated the ideal way to go 3 rounds while expending the minimum of energy. Singer's demonstrated how strong he is, but Smith has a reputation of mixing great strength of his own with stellar defense. Round 1 begins. The announcers are dismissive of Singer from the start, writing the match off as guaranteed for Smith, but it's unwarranted at this point. Neither fighter lands much, because they're playing it safe. Smith manages an uppercut and a low kick, while Singer lands a couple low kicks of his own. It's an even round with neither fighter taking the advantage. Round 2. The fighters joust a little, but then Smith maneuvers his opponent against the ropes and lands a series of punches that put him on the mat. The referee calls the match at once, and Maurice Smith wins by knockout. Singer fought much more conservatively than in his last match, and this was likely a wise strategy, but he made a mistake in opening up after Smith landed his first uppercut. Smith delivered every bit of what you'd expect from a ring legend like him, and he goes into the finals decisively fresher than Michael McDonald. Singer exits the tournament and kickboxing in general. This was his last professional match. The next super fight is a non-title bout between Dewey, the Black Cobra Cooper and Arne Soldwedel. Cooper was another big name in US kickboxing, being a multiple-time US and world champion. He'd competed in the last K-1 US event, losing his match by split decision but maintaining his reputation as a serious contender. Soldwedel was a major name in international karate competition, at this point representing the Seitokaikan organization. Soldwedel hadn't fought for K-1 before, at least not K-1 proper, and he has his work cut out for him with Cooper. Round 1 begins. Cooper and Soldwedel feel each other out at first, but Soldwedel seems to get tired of that quickly and throws a very extravagant kick. It's easily the flashiest move of the entire night. He returns to the basics a few moments later, and hits Cooper with a straight right. He drives him back with another right shortly thereafter. Cooper tries lunging several times, but Soldwedel's defense holds. It's an exciting first round, with Soldwedel surprising all with his proficiency. Round 2. Cooper lands some low kicks and knees in the clinch, then gets Soldwedel against the ropes with a flying knee. Soldwedel's spinning back fist gets blocked and he takes a left jab. Cooper is rebounding with tighter defense, better control of the distance, and a better sense of his opponent's timing. After a body shot and a knee from Cooper, Soldwedel doesn't look like he knows what to do anymore. The momentum is now firmly with Cooper. Round 3. Both fighters are tired now, hanging in the clinch more than actually fighting. Both try to make headway with low kicks, leading to Soldwedel enduring a painful low blow. He gets some time to recover, after which he comes in with a flurry but doesn't manage to land anything. Cooper throws him to the canvas, then goes for a jumping roundhouse. They start to slug and Soldwedel catches a knee to the groin which, disappointingly, the referee doesn't notice. Soldwedel finds strength in desperation and repeatedly comes forward, but it's Cooper who lands the final blows of the round. The match is over and the decision is in the hands of the judges. Cooper wins by unanimous decision, likely having carried the second and third rounds. Nevertheless, it may be Soldwedel who wins the moral victory, having fought a very strong fight and demonstrating the strength of karate. The low blows probably factored into his performance, but it's all the more impressive that he was able to come back as well as he did. The third and final superfight of the program is the late Tommy Glanville vs. Mark Miller, in a rematch from their encounter at the 2000 USA Championships. Glanville, the crowd favorite, is probably the better-known fighter, but ironically his most famous match is a 2004 loss to Bob Sapp. Miller may be better known to fans of the Glory promotion, having fought for them in a few of their earliest shows. In the video package, Glanville is very confident and brash, having beaten Miller previously.
Mark will never beat me. I'ma show him darkness. He'll be my bitch.
Miller comes across as more reserved and collected, so it may be a matter of clashing personalities as much as anything else. It's announced that the match will be conducted under Muay Thai rules, but these are modified to disallow elbows. Round 1 begins. Miller throws a high side kick and a spinning back kick, but can't find purchase with either. Tommy comes forward aggressively, sending Miller to the canvas with a low kick that surprisingly isn't ruled a knockdown. This is probably the least graceful round thus far of any fight. Both competitors are strong, but they're not connecting with enough strikes to do any real damage to each other. Round 2. Glanville asserts himself, and when Miller tries to retaliate, he goes down avoiding a counter punch. He goes down again trying another back kick, and goes for an axe kick that doesn't come close to connecting. He finally lands a couple of head shots that aren't strong enough to affect Tommy, who lands some hard low kicks in return. Miller penetrates Glanville's defenses again, but his punch just doesn't land with enough power to hurt him. Glanville has had lots of opportunities to counter-strike, but like Miller, he's not accurate with anything other than his low kicks. In the third and final round, Miller likely realizes that he might lose the match due to Glanville's aggressiveness and takes action. He finally earns a knockdown with a couple of punches to the side of Glanville's head. Glanville lands a straight right that knocks Miller dizzy, but he hangs onto the ropes to keep from falling. They joust, and Miller catches another strike to the head, but the subsequent promptness of the clinch means he can ride out the effects. Miller takes his turn to land a big right, immediately before the round ends. The judges rule a split decision in favor of Miller, who saved himself with the knockdown. If Glanville had been more accurate earlier in the fight, he may yet have outpointed his opponent. This, objectively, is the ugliest match of the program. Neither fighter is particularly graceful, and before the final round, the number of connected strikes is very low. An excess of telegraphed punches coupled with a general lack of accuracy means a step down from the higher caliber fights of the night. Mark Miller has since retired from competition, having written a memoir about his life as a fighter. Glanville fought for at least another 3 years, including several more outings in K-1, and also worked as a bodyguard. He died in 2005, at age 42. The tournament finale brings us Michael McDonald vs. Maurice Smith, two fighters whose names are synonymous with K-1, but who haven't reached the pinnacle of this new mecca in kickboxing. Comparing the two, it's easy to notice their differences, though their similarities are significant. Both are of the same generation, with Smith being just 3 years older than McDonald, and having only about 6 years more professional experience. Both had established themselves as world champions well before arriving in K-1, and both have experienced a career resurgence. McDonald by reinventing himself within the company, and Smith by way of his success in mixed martial arts. It is bound to be an interesting and highly skillful match. Round 1. The fighters start quickly by throwing heavy combinations. Smith isn't holding back this time, and uses his superior strength to keep from being pushed around. McDonald holds his own as well, matching Smith's legendary defense and minimizing any attack thrown at him. Neither man is able to do any damage to the other, and the round might have been a draw. Round 2. A restless Maurice Smith keeps McDonald on the defensive. Michael nearly lands a left hook to Smith's head, then connects with a counter-strike, which Smith is able to absorb. McDonald lands a round kick to the midsection, but again, Smith is unperturbed. McDonald connects with another headshot, but Smith does the same when McDonald pushes out of a clinch. Round 3, the presumptive final round. Michael hangs back, maybe thinking he's ahead on points, but this gives Smith the opportunity to be more aggressive. A hard jab by McDonald lands on Smith's head. They exchange uppercuts in the clinch. McDonald goes for a jumping hook, but gets stopped in midair. McDonald takes a knee in the clinch, and shortly thereafter the round ends. It's in the hands of the judges now. The judges rule a majority draw, and order an additional round. The tension is palpable. Maurice and Michael come across as almost perfectly matched, and their combination of tight defense and high accuracy leads to an even number of exchanged strikes. Now, stamina and endurance are going to be of the essence. Round 4 starts out roughly, the two boxers almost grappling in the clinch as Smith delivers some hard knees. McDonald misses with a roundhouse kick. Smith lands some uppercuts in the clinch. Again, McDonald is holding back, perhaps this time out of exhaustion rather than confidence, and he seems to be hanging in the clinch. He catches a few kicks to the leg and midsection, followed by some knees to the thighs. He eventually retaliates with some low kicks of his own. In the final seconds, Smith throws a mighty combination that McDonald nevertheless manages to block. Again, it goes to the judges, who score this round independently of the previous ones. The ruling finally comes in, and it's a split decision win for Maurice Smith, earning his very first K-1 tournament, and moving one step closer to competing in the World Grand Prix. This has been a very exciting finale. It was a fight between two tacticians, which isn't always the case in K-1. Even though neither boxer landed a big hit, both demonstrated superior strategy and tactics. Michael McDonald may have lost, but the fact that he came so close to defeating a fighter like Maurice Smith marks a turning point for him in K-1. He entered the Grand Prix in Melbourne the following month, where he scored an upset over Mirko Cro Cop. 1 year later, he entered and won the US preliminaries, the first of 3 major tournament wins for him. He never made it to the final Grand Prix, but his legacy as a K-1 favorite endures. Maurice Smith's victory tonight is his greatest single accomplishment in K-1. His triumph led him to the primary in Las Vegas, 3 months later, where he defeated Jürgen Kroot in the quarterfinals before losing to his old rival, Peter Aerts. He didn't make it to the World Grand Prix that year, and a final attempt at the Las Vegas tournament in 2003 yielded another loss. Smith fought what seems to have been his last kickboxing bout in 2005, and he retired from mixed martial arts competition 8 years later. The K-1 2001 US preliminary was the most competitive tournament the company had held in North America at that time. For the first time, a US tournament combined an abundance of internationally recognized world champions with a high degree of well-matched competition. While there have been arguably more thrilling US shows, this may be the best one where the emphasis was in fact on North American fighters, with future events showcasing a more international range of contestants. It is a genuine showcase of some of the best continental kickboxers, and is a must-see event for American kickboxing fans, even those who don't typically watch K-1. It shows that, even though the sport's heyday in North America had passed, its athletes are still more than capable of world-caliber performances in the ring.